So welcome, Dallas Hudgens, if you will.
Thank you, Dr. McHaney. And I still call to mind a lot of things that I learned from you in college when I'm stuck and don't know how to write the next sentence. I always try to think of something. So you were a great help and a very generous teacher. I have a new novel called Season of Gene, and as Dr. McHaney mentioned, there's some baseball in it. It's about a character named Joe who, as a child, sort of bounced between a mentally ill mother and an uncle who ran a small numbers operation and a bar in Cliffside Park, New Jersey. And Joe, I guess the biggest thing in his life is that he wasn't able to help or to save either his mother or his uncle, who both had kind of bad ends to their own lives. So the book starts when he's 35 years old, and Joe's life sort of revolves around video games, his Friday night baseball league, things like that. And he's come to own a car detailing business / ticket brokerage / limo service that he owns with his best friend, Gene. And early in the book, Gene dies unexpectedly, leaving behind both a financial and emotional mess for his own family to clean up. And Joe steps forward and is trying to help out, to help Gene's widow and child, help them save their house, and to also save their own business and their Friday night baseball team. So the scene that I'm going to read happens after Joe has taken Gene's widow, Joy, out to dinner to offer his help. Even when Gene was alive, Joy had always been quite the charmer, touching my forearm when we talked, smiling like we shared a secret. I can't deny that I enjoyed the attention. She had the darkest eyes I'd ever seen. They were like carbon monoxide, powerful, but in a way that you didn't notice until after they'd made you lightheaded. Joy asked me to come inside after dinner. While she paid the babysitter, I sat down on the sofa and whipped through the extra innings package on Gene's plasma Hitachi. The Devil Rays and Mariners were getting cranked up in Seattle. Joy took off her shoes, these pink Pumas, and picked up a couple of little Gene's toys. "You want something to drink?" she asked. "Nah, I'm good." "Well, I need a glass of water," she said. "Those Kir Royales will give me a headache if I don't." The house was cold, as usual. Lou Piniella, Devil Rays manager and the greatest slow outfielder in baseball history, looked snug and warm in the Rays dugout, wearing his black and green warm-up jacket. That's what Joy needed for house guests, warm-up jackets. Because of her propensity for lowering the AC, Gene had always slept in a hooded sweatshirt. Joy went to the kitchen to fix a glass of water, came back and sat down at the other end of the sofa. I could feel her staring at me. I figured she was a little lonely, maybe just wanted to talk some more. I pointed at the TV screen. Unfucking believable picture on this thing. Joy shook her head. "Yeah, Gene used to come down here in the middle of the night and watch his porn movies. He'd get the surround sound going. I'd wake up thinking I was in the middle of an orgy, walls vibrating and everything. He was so inconsiderate." I made a conscious effort to look at Joy and not at the game. "I wish I could think of something to say, Joy. I know this must be a difficult time, mixed emotions and so forth." She lifted her legs onto the couch, crossed them beneath her. "I got to tell you something," she said. "Okay." I hit the mute button on the remote, a gesture of sorts. "I was lying at the restaurant," she said. "You know, when I said I'd had an affair with someone last year, I didn't. It's just that I thought about it. I thought about it a lot. There was someone I was really attracted to, only they didn't know it. I took my time coming up with a response, tried to craft it just so. Don't say too much, don't say too little. I settled on this one. Everybody has those kinds of feelings sometimes." "This was different," she said. "I used to imagine that I was married to this person, that I had his kid instead of Gene's. I used to think about how things would be different if I was with him. I was trying to come up with another response. I just about decided that maybe the best thing was to recommend she seek some grief counseling. I'd heard about that somewhere. When I noticed the way her hands were shaking on the water glass and the way she was looking at me. "Oh, shit," I said. "You mean?" She looked down. Neither of us said anything for a moment. And then she set her water glass on the coffee table and moved closer. "I've seen the way you look at me sometimes," she said. "It's not dirty, and I like that. It's not dirty at all. You're a very, very beautiful woman, Joy, but this might not be..." I never finished that sentence. What did she mean, not dirty? She made it sound honorable, important, like an achievement. It's not that I believed she was a deep person, and I'd realized long ago that I wasn't deep. Truth was, there were empty spots inside me, lots of them, cold little hollows that I could mostly ignore. But now they were full and warm, like I'd been the one drinking those Cure Royales, like Lou Piniella had draped his jacket over my shoulders. And instead of finishing that sentence, I reached up and traced the line of Joy's bangs, watched her eyes close and the subtle teenage scars on her cheeks relax. And there we were on the couch where Gene used to watch his dirty movies. We were laying in bed when Joy asked if I prayed. The ceiling fan was spinning lazy circles, and the moon was shining on the pale blue walls. Prince was on the clock radio, just enough static coming in to break up the beats. "Pray? What are you talking about?" "I mean, do you ever talk to God?" she said. I looked her in the eye. She was propped up on an elbow. "Is that important to you?" "Of course it's important. I care about you." "What about Gene?" I asked. "Did he pray?" Believe it or not, Gene went to Mass twice a week. All I could do was shake my head. He was a busy man. Joy laughed a little. "Can you imagine taking his confession? You'd need an intermission." We let that thought settle. It took a moment, and then I felt a need to tell her something. It was like a balloon swelling in my head. When I was in prison, I used to go to chapel. And the thing is, when you're locked up, you keep trying to tell yourself that you're different from a lot of the other people. Some of them, it's like they've got no good at all in them. And that's what you're trying to convince yourself of, that you got something good in you. So I had trouble paying attention in chapel. But the chaplain gave me this Good News New Testament, and I started reading it. And I remember this thing Paul said about how nothing good dwelled inside him, and that he could will what was good, but his flesh just wouldn't let him do it. "That's not you," she said. "You're a good person." So why did I screw that waitress in Cliffside? This is what I asked, remembering the betrayal of my wife nearly 15 years ago. "Well," she said, "you were what, 22 or something?" "She wanted to have kids," I said. "Who, the waitress?" "No, my wife. Her name was Pam." I explained the rest of it, how Pam had gotten sick about a year after I'd left her, how she died without ever having any kids. She might have married someone else if it hadn't been for me. She might have had kids and left behind a part of herself. Joy sat up, crossed her legs, looked down on me. She was holding her hands over her breasts. Her face in that bluish light was beautifully worn with disappointment. "Did you love her?" Joy asked. "Probably not," I said. "She was different, you know. Had good parents, grew up in a quiet house, didn't drink. I'd never seen anything like it, never seen it so pure. I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be pure too." We stayed there in the quiet for a while, and the song changed. That's when I asked Joy what she thought about reincarnation. "I don't think there's anything in the Bible about it. Aside from that," I said, "what do you think? You think it makes any sense?" "If it's not in the Bible," she said, "then we shouldn't be talking about it. That kind of shit scares me." Her face hardened a little, and she was not as beautiful anymore. "Anyway," I said, "that's what I pray for sometimes, that maybe Pam gets to come back and have some kids. She was a good person. She deserves that." And that's the end of that scene there. So I guess when I started writing this book, I sort of had in mind, I had been thinking about how when we all die, no matter how much planning we do, we all seem to kind of leave behind a mess of some sort. So I guess Gene, I kind of took a character like Gene, who dies early in the book, and somebody who was just a total mess in life. I tried to look at the mess that he would leave behind after he died, and then take a character like Joe, who's felt helpless, to kind of clean up messes created throughout his life, and who's trying to take this one and do something with it. And as the book goes on, the baseball part sort of plays in that Gene has acquired a very valuable baseball relic that could bring a lot of money at auction, which is being stolen back and forth by people. And Joe tries to reacquire it so that they can sell that and hopefully save his business and Gene's house for his wife. So that's a little bit about the book. And if you have any questions or anything, I'd be glad to answer. Bill? Oh, that's right. I didn't mention that to begin with. The book actually takes place in the Washington, D.C. area, sort of the suburbs of Washington, D.C., with Joe and Gene are both natives of New Jersey. Joy's from Philadelphia. So there are scenes that take place in both of those areas as well, and Connecticut. There's an ex-mobster who's moved to the suburbs in Connecticut and become a real estate developer, very successful, who's trying to acquire this baseball relic as well. So. I try to spread things. Yeah, I try to spread things around. The last thing I want to do is have anybody be able to connect any dots and say that something is true. So if a character even accidentally seems to start looking like someone I know, I make sure I give them a characteristic that's exactly opposite of that person, so that there's no nothing not too much in common with anybody real. So I try to keep it as fictional as possible.
I think that's a sort of syndrome in a way. When you start out being a writer, Faulkner's first two novels, the first one is set in Charleston, Georgia, a town he made up, which looks just like Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah.
And the second one is set in New Orleans. And that sense of writing away from your own experience and away from your own material. If I don't know whether you're Atlanta material or Southern material, your sense of the South is a strong thing with you. It doesn't have to be, but it's interesting how it may be a very good thing to not take the things that mean the most to you, even while you're learning to be a good writer, and then saving it, have something to write in your old age.
Yeah, maybe when I learn how to write, that'll be a little easier. But, in terms of the Southern setting, I think when I was trying to write the first book, which I had to rewrite about 5 times, I didn't have a sense that of how important, sense of place was when I did the first draft of it. And I wasn't consciously thinking that I was writing a Southern novel or Southern setting, but I was just trying to give it a strong sense of place. And I think it then became more of a Southern setting. And I tried to follow up and give this book to, give a strong sense of the, like I said, the Washington, D.C. area as well. So, okay, well, thank you all very much for coming out on a rainy night. I know you need the rain, so I'm happy for that. And again, yeah, I'll come back. All right, thank you.